There's a shift that needs to take place in every leader. And sometimes it takes them until they're older in life, or maybe until you're almost a parent, to have this kind of mindset. But I think you can get it early in your 20s. And it's this. It's the mindset going like, I'm not trying to be the hero. What I'm doing is I'm trying to make heroes of other people. And I'm going to do everything I can to make heroes of other people. My fruit grows on other people's trees. We're the platform. We're not the show. We're the platform, we're not the show. As a leader, when you develop that mindset, no, you know what? My fruit grows on other people's trees. Other leaders, what they do, that's the biggest difference I'm going to make in my life. That's when, okay, you start to become a hero maker. And really, that's the fundamental shift that creates movement.
Welcome to the We Are Vineyard podcast, conversations to help us grow with Jesus and each other. In today's episode, our host, Jay Pathak, talks to Dave Ferguson. Dave is an award-winning author, founding and lead pastor of Chicago's Community Christian Church, a missional multi-site community considered one of the most influential churches in America. Dave is also the visionary for the international church planting movement, NewThing, and president of the Exponential Conference. Let's listen in.
Dave, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being willing to talk for a bit.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jay. This will be fun.
We just jumped into your world like out of nowhere, saying, hey, we're going to appear in your building and stick a microphone in front of you. And you were like, I'm in. Let's do it.
Well, I had a hunch we'd talk about some of my favorite things, so let's do it.
Well, then let's start with what might be one of your favorite things, but you wouldn't want to admit it is, which is yourself. No, I'm just kidding. I really do want to hear.
Wow, you know me better than I thought.
No, I really would. I really would love to hear a bit of your story. So talk a little bit about how you grow up, how you end up doing this amazing thing you're doing. I mean, walk us through some of the components.
I grew up in Chicago. When I say Chicago, people in Chicago land say Chicago, even though I'm out in Naperville now. Yeah. I actually grew up in the south suburbs. My mom and dad, it's a little place called University Park. My mom and dad moved here when I was 5. Yes. And to plant a church.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of in the DNA. Had a great experience growing up. It was a terrific church. But the part I kind of resented that everybody thought I was going to be a pastor.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because it's kind of like, who wants to do what everybody thinks you're supposed to do?
Right.
So I wasn't going to do that, but I did go to a Christian college. And then somewhere in my freshman year at Christian college, I started asking this question of, okay, so it's kind of a big question, really. What are you going to trade your life for? And I kind of had this idea like, hey, you're going to give your life for something either all at once or over the course of 80 years. So what's it going to be? And I ended up saying, well, the way I language it now, I want to help people find their way back to God. If I could do that, that would be the best thing I could leverage my life for.
So let me ask you about that really quick. So you've been raised as a PK.
Sure.
But you still have a real burden for lost people and people that don't.
Yeah.
How? Like, because often people who have been raised in church contexts are aware of church people fundamentally. And even if they want to do ministry, they want to do ministry because they like church and they want someone to do church so differently or whatever. How did that get sewn into you?
I mean, partly I think it was gifting. Partly I think it was also something that came from my family. The church I grew up in was very evangelistic. Okay. And it was actually, like I said, it was a very positive experience. I just didn't like the idea of everybody thinking they knew what I was going to do. And that.
Right, you can't tell me who I am.
Right, kind of, So it's not an unusual kind of 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old experience.
But you were raised in a church expression then that was inherently evangelistic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What a gift.
Where, I mean, we'd see 100 people or so come to faith and were baptized in a year. And
wow.
Actually, my dad, the church he led at, they actually went multi-site way before we did. It wasn't that successful, but they gave it a shot.
Wow.
And he did. He loves my dad. And he was just recently retired, was on our staff team. He loves people and loves helping people find Jesus.
Yeah.
So I'm sure some of it came from that.
Yeah, but that's a familiar thought is my point. Like that isn't like some breakaway or I'm going to reform things in a way no one's ever tried before.
No, there was some though. Eventually, as I kind of said, I want to help you find God. Eventually, going like, I guess the best way to do that is to be a pastor. But probably the reform, the different part was going like, you know what though, I don't think being at a typical church is going to really work for me. So I was going like, I need to plant a church.
Okay.
And then then the thought of like, I don't want to just plant one church. What if I planted a church that planted churches?
Wow.
And so that essentially is what set me on this path.
So coming out of college, you then go to Bible school or do more training?
No, I finished up at the Christian college. I eventually went to grad school at Wheaton. While I was in grad school at Wheaton, myself, my brother John, actually a couple other friends from undergrad, we all moved back to Chicago and said, hey, let's start this thing from scratch. And
so starting a thing from scratch, as you know, has a million different iterations.
Sure.
So what year is this?
This would be 89.
Okay, 89.
Prehistoric times. Seriously.
So I mean, I'm looking at you. You look really young. So you were like 9 or 10.
Right. Exactly.
Right. No. So 89.
Yeah.
You're like, let's do this thing from scratch. Is this like in current vernacular?
Yeah.
That requires raising a bunch of money.
Yep.
And gathering your first 200 that will show up at the high school.
For us, yeah, I'm running across the country. Every family member, friend, or church I can hit up for dollars. I'm raising money.
Wow.
We come back here, Naperville Central High School, which is out in the west suburb of Chicago. In the cafeterias, our first, now things you wouldn't, well, there's a lot of things we did you definitely wouldn't do now, but one of the many is we actually did a telemarketing campaign.
Wow.
I hope nobody's listening to this.
This is so great.
It's so embarrassing. We did, we recruited other people, set up our own phone bank.
Man.
And we did 56,000 dial-ups.
Wait a minute. Well, hold on.
Not making it up.
These aren't robocalls.
No.
This is like me and my friends.
Me and other people we recruit. We'd train them real quickly, and we'd spend 3 hours every night on the phone calling them. And basically the idea was you talking to them and ask them if we could send them some information about this brand new church. And then we would send them 5 pieces, or 6. It's kind of like the six to stick over the next 6 weeks. So that we'll all point towards the first service. There was a guy that was kind of hot at that time who was pitching this idea, which we used, and it ended up actually working brilliantly. I mean, we had, 460 some people that showed up our first service.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it shrunk from there.
Yeah. Well, if anyone's planted a church, they know some of that.
Right.
But so you and how many people did the calls? I really want to know about this right now.
I'm like 25. My brother's 23. My other friend Darren's 21. We're all in our early 20s.
Right.
And then, so literally, any churches in the Chicagoland area that we had connections with.
Help me out.
Volunteers come in, spend 3 hours. We'll feed you dinner and we'll train you, and you spend 3 hours on the phone. And we would set up a competition too. Like, hey, how many yeses you could get?
This is
it's insane.
My absolute favorite thing. So because I actually was a telemarketer for a minute.
Oh, really?
Oh my goodness.
I think I could have done that. Because
it
was me and this one intern named Troy Jackson.
Battling.
We were always competing for the top percentage.
The close rate for the stuff we'll send you.
I know. It sounds bad.
No, it doesn't sound bad. It sounds earnest is what it sounds.
Let's just say it was passionate.
That's what I'm saying.
So that was good. That part was good.
So you were bringing people in.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. We will move on.
Okay.
But you're bringing people in who are volunteers, sight unseen.
Yeah.
They don't know you. They don't know the church. They're like, I don't know.
Some of them we know, but most of them we don't know.
Most. Right. Yeah, they just walk in like, hey, I heard.
Hey, I want to help with this new church.
Listen, sit down. Here's your script.
All right, here's your phone.
I love it. I do love it. And you know what I love about it? It's a similar story to the sort of Rick Warren, I'm going to knock on every door and I'm going to ask them these 7 questions. And I'm going to ask them, could we start a Bible study in your house?
Yeah. Right. Essentially, we did that, except we just did it using the phone.
That's exactly right. And I wonder, maybe we'll come back to this. What I wonder is how much that puts a certain DNA into the very people you're starting to work with, that like, this is what we do.
Well, to your point, before we did the it was actually called Phones for You campaign. Sorry. I feel like this whole interview is a giant apology.
No, No, this is
Before
great.
we did that, we did about 5,000 door-to-door calls.
Yeah.
And we would do exactly, and part of the reason we did it is because Rick had done it.
Yeah, of course.
And so we're knocking on the door and we're talking. And one of the things that was good about that, and we were asked, hey, what would you be looking for in a new church?
Right.
I mean, it burned in our brain. Here's what someone who's far from God, here's someone who doesn't go to church, here's what they're looking for, here's what they don't like.
Yeah.
Here's what might cause them to be interested in. And that was super, super helpful.
Well, and it's not, you're not reading a book.
No.
You're not
You're talking to people in your community every day.
Yes.
I mean, we did that for like 3 months.
Wow. And then you're doing it on the phone.
After that.
I love it.
Once it got cold in Chicago.
Right.
Let's try the phone.
It's too cold. This was great. Now it's too cold. Okay. So then you launch. You said 400 and...
Yeah. But by, that was like in March. And by May, I think we shrunk to 180. And then sometime in the summer, we were like 135. And you're looking around and people are rattling around in this huge cafeteria. And you're going like, oh my gosh, are we going to make it?
What have we done? And the money is starting to run down. I assume.
We didn't have any sense about that. So we should have been asking that question, but we didn't have any sense about that. My wife was a teacher going, okay, I got that covered.
Oh, okay, good. So you had created a minimum threshold that you're like, we're not living well, but we can live this way.
We were surviving. Well, my brother John, who was single, I was the only one married. So my brother John moves in with us.
Okay, good.
I mean, we got married in February. He moves in with us. We're not even married a year.
Wow.
That's another dumb thing.
Right. This is great. This is great. We're writing a book right now.
If pain and mistakes are great, it's great. Yes.
Well, no, and I mean, we don't know each other, but my story is nearly identical, except I wasn't as smart as you in that I didn't raise any money.
Oh, okay.
And I moved across the country with 10 people, and I waited tables.
Where did you plant?
I planted just outside of Denver, where I live now.
Okay.
And I moved from Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Home of the Ohio State University.
Yes.
And I moved with 10 people, big church, prophetic words. And, we do our church plant video, which is literally the most horrifying thing I've ever seen now. I mean, it could make me crawl under a table to see it because it is so earnest. You have these people going, they're waiting for us.
Oh,
because God has called us to win the lost. And I do this whole thing in the video where I say, like, if you had the cure to cancer and people were sick and you didn't tell them, you would not be a lazy person. You would be an evil person. This is my video. I was and it was real. Like, I'm not playing a game.
And it's partly true. Right?
It's partly true.
And I did the same kind of thing with my team. Our motto was whatever it takes. I mean, what could be more unhealthy than that? But I mean, as a church planter, you gotta have some of that in you.
No, you must.
Yeah.
No, you must.
And again, part of it's true. Like, no, you know what? I still kind of feel like that. Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's right.
okay, I want to raise a good kids. I want to have a healthy marriage. Yeah. I'd like to stay in shape.
Yeah, like my body.
But there's still going to be some of that in you.
I should sleep.
Because it is. I mean, it goes back to the question I asked when I was in college. What are you going to trade your life for? I do. I really do. I'm still to this day.
I know.
I want to trade my life for that mission.
No, me too. I agree. But it's funny to hear.
I know.
And our thing does all the same things. And your body suffers. Your relationships suffer.
Oh, the whatever it takes. It was a good motivation. But like our whole band quit the first year because I was driving them so hard.
Yeah.
Because I had them coming on Sunday, I had them coming on Wednesday, I had them doing setup and tear down. And, they had like other jobs and stuff. And I thought they were being big weenies.
Oh, totally. No, and our line was all hands on deck.
There you go. Same thing.
All hands on deck, man. This everybody. Everybody's doing everything. You know who the welcome team is? All of us.
Yes.
Do you know what the setup team is?
Dude, if you want to plant a church, I'm in. We can do this together all over again.
You know what the prayer team is? Us. That's who.
Yeah.
And I would just do this whole shtick on it. And what was great about it is you could tell who the wild-eyed people were. And they're like, yes. And the healthier folks were like, Jay, I'm going to help out, okay? But I'm like, oh, man.
Yeah.
You're so weak. And, thank God we grow up. Okay, so you do that. Your whole
Yeah.
team is quitting. People are rattling around in a building. What's the next moment where you're like, okay, I think I see something differently. There's a different way to do this that will make me and us better at what God has asked us to do.
Well, there's probably a little more naivete.
No,
Because,
you're like, don't worry, that goes for a long time.
It does go for a long time
Okay.
because I'm telling it now in retrospect, but like
Right.
when they left, it wasn't like I had the epiphany.
No.
No, I'm still going like they're weak.
Yeah. The
So-
brake pad has still a little bit left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quick story. So like maybe how old are you, Jay?
I'm 45.
No, you're not.
I am.
45? Okay. So this
What
is
do you, are you like, I'm 55?
I thought maybe you
look
were-
way older. What is this?
I thought maybe he was a little older.
That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good at all. Okay, I'm back in. I'm back. I'm over it. See, I let it go already.
Well, I thought
I'm
maybe
actually
you're not going to
45.
know. You won't be able to relate this one because I'm older than you.
good.
So like,
I'm shocked. You look so much younger than me.
I know you already paid me a nice compliment, and I'm being a dork. So the last conference I go to before I planted church, there's a guy named Carl George. You know Carl?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Carl has just come from South Korea. He's come up
yeah.
with this the meta church model,
Oh yeah, man.
but he hadn't presented to anybody. He hadn't written his
Right.
book or anything at this
Wow.
point.
Okay.
And so I'm like a junkie,
It's fresh.
and
yeah.
it is. And I'm bugging him, going like, "Hey, I want to get in on this. I want to get in on this." And
Let's
he's like,
go.
"No, you can't come." I'm like, "Why can't I come?" He said, "It's only for large churches." And he said, "You haven't even planted a church." So I just keep
Come on, man. Just let me
right.
go. Right.
That's exactly right. And so eventually he goes like, okay, you can come. And it actually was in Columbus. You can come, but you have to sit on the observer's bench.
For sure. Whatever you want.
I don't even know what that means, but like, okay, I'm in the room. So I go. It's the first time he's presented this. A guy named Eddie Gibbs. Does that ring a bell? Eddie Gibbs.
It does too. Yeah.
Okay. Eddie Gibbs was a big deal. I'm looking at your friend Caleb over
Caleb,
here.
yeah.
He was a big deal because he was kind of the church growth guru from England and now
Yes.
just come to Fuller. And since Carl was
Yes, I
presenting
got
this
him now.
stuff,
Yep.
he's like, he wanted to get in on it too. So he sits right next to me. So it's like the 24-year-old version of me. Listen to Carl present, how do you, multiply a church to the scale of what's happened in Seoul, Korea, largest church in the history of
Yes.
Christianity. How do you
Yes.
apply that to a Western context?
Yeah.
And Eddie's coaching me the whole time. And basically the whole model that Carl presented was built around like multiplication and apprenticeship.
Yes.
And I'm going like, okay, at the end of it, I'm doing that. And so that
Early on.
oh yes, well, I mean, you're taking in everything you can.
Totally.
And so when we started, you asked kind of like that, what was the moment? That was a little bit of the moment because then we built in multiplication to everything we did. So it was really it was God's kindness. And then
Yeah.
I'll throw another name at you. So we come to Naperville. You heard the name Lyle Schaller?
I should. No.
Okay, so Lyle, Google it. Anybody
Okay,
listening,
I will.
Google it. He wrote probably 50 books, edited another 50 on church life. He was kind of liberal as far as denomination, but more conservative in his practice. So everybody read him. He lived here in Naperville. And so he came to our first service. And so he would just,
Wow.
he was kind of like to church life then what a Peter Drucker was to management.
Okay, sure.
And
Yep.
so I had these two people that God just sovereignly put into my life.
Yes.
Who, really impacted everything we did early on, which then we just kind of took that and hung on to it and kept scaling it. And that's how I think in many ways community ended up being this multi-site church, how the NewThing, which is our church planting organization, got birthed, and now we're in 40 countries.
Yes.
It impacted even my thought around Exponential, all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And I look back and I'm going like, wow, that was just really nice of God to put those people in my life.
Totally. And you think about the different kinds of content that could have gone into your life in that moment that you would probably have swallowed whole in the same manner. but
I would like to say you're wrong, but it's true.
But by the grace of God, that's the thing.
Yeah.
And it carries, honestly, the bit I know about how you work here and the way that you've been helping us in the vineyard, it carries all the way to this moment. Like that seed, those things continue to grow. For me, it was Dawson Trotman.
Okay.
I come to Christ radically, no faith. And in this Baptist church, I'm handed a tape, Born to Reproduce. I've known the Lord a couple weeks. And I listened to it and it just occurs to me, this is how you do it. This is it. And I just start telling my friends who tell their friends, and we start just building things. And all of a sudden you have small groups without knowing that you're leading a small group. And people tell you, well, that probably means you're a church planner. And for me, it was, isn't this just what believers do? Maybe I actually want to be a lawyer. I have no need to do, I don't want to do whatever that is.
Did you actually think you want to be a lawyer?
No, yeah, I was training to.
Oh, because that was actually, I mean, it was early. That was actually my thought before I had that.
Yeah,
kind of like, what are you going to trade your life for?
No,
I was thinking law and maybe politics.
Yeah, I was doing philosophy to do law. That's what my degree's in. But then when I started to realize, no, maybe this is unusual. I don't know. And that's how you become a pastor on accident, is you just lead enough people to Jesus. You make enough disciples. You train enough leaders. You have a church.
Right.
Because making disciples makes churches, but trying to do church may or may not make disciples.
That's exactly right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, you're way far advanced because you're just so much older than me. So I
Touche.
I can't even. Okay, so multiplication is seeded in the DNA early.
Yeah.
Even though you're sort of banging around doing who knows what, that is the drumbeat. Something is happening underneath where we are making disciples and doing multiplication. So
enough so that even before we started the church, our friends, we're going out to breakfast together. Hey, what's going to be the mission vision of this church? As far as our particular kind of vision, we talked about in 3 phases. Phase 1, we want to be an impact church. So we want to impact whatever community we're in. Phase 2, though, we said we want to be a reproducing church. We were thinking church planting. And actually, then this is kind of crazy. Phase 3, we said, if God would bless it, we'd love to be a movement. Which is, I mean, you got, 4 or 5 friends around a breakfast table. It's just, again, you have to be in your early 20s, I think, to think like this. But there is, and we talked about this before we got on the podcast, there is something, and I would encourage everybody listening in, there's something about dreaming big. And I know sometimes it comes off arrogant. So word of caution there, but there is something about dreaming big that forces you into multiplication thinking.
Yes.
And I always challenge leaders, if you don't have a dream that makes you dependent on God, you need to get a bigger dream. And so when you do that, that makes you go like, okay, I know I can't do this on my own. I'm going to have to disciple people. I'm going to have to multiply leaders. I'm going to have to plant churches when you have a big dream.
Yeah. And so in that, what was sort of the big dream language of those goals?
Well, early on, we actually would, and this will sound really absurd, we would actually talk about like, what would it take for us to reach 1 billion people? Which, again, the part of me wants to apologize for that. But the other part of it, I also know that it made me think differently about what we were going to do.
No doubt.
And particularly because you have enough sense even at an early age to go like, hold it, okay, one church is not going to reach 1 billion people.
Yes. Even
one denomination. So all of a sudden you're going, I got to plant lots of churches that plant lots of churches. With that kind of, I'd also going to have to work outside just my little sect or tribe or denomination. I mean, it pushes a lot of boundaries and a lot of things that really, I think, pushes you into the kingdom of God.
So let me. This isn't me being skeptical because I'm buying all the way, but I want to think about it practically.
Okay.
So everything you're saying is inherently true, and it's inspiring and it's motivational. Anyone listening, especially if you've done any kind of ministry, your pastor, you're going, oh man, that's good. I want to be that kind of leader. If it's that obvious, why aren't people leading this way? About every leader I know on their very best day at some point have thought thoughts like this. But why does that come off the table so quickly? What do you think are the obstacles that make it so that most leaders aren't necessarily multiplying, reproducing?
I think there's probably a few things. I mean, I think one is, honestly, I think we get distracted with the busyness of ministry. And I think most of us, if we look back over the last 2 years, it's been really, really hard. It's been really, really hard.
Really hard.
And I think when it comes, particularly, I think in the North American context around multiplication, we've been distracted.
Yeah.
And I think probably people like us are trying to get, hey, leaders, let's go back and think about how do we multiply, plant churches, and think movement. So even before these last 2 years, but particularly the last year, we can get distracted by it.
Yes.
I think others were afraid to say it out loud. Because I think the fear of saying it out loud is that we're going to end up feeling like a failure. Here's the thing. I doubt I ever reach 1 billion people. But there's something about the exercise of that.
Yeah.
and even smaller visions about that even if you, and this is the thing, I mean, we're people saved by grace. So it's like, you know what, if we don't get there, oh, well.
Whatever.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But I think the exercise of that pushes you kind of to to a different place. So I think for some of us, I think it's fear, and some of us it's busyness that kind of keep us from doing that.
If you're interested in learning more about church planning with Vineyard USA, you'll want to check out Multiply Vineyard. At Multiply Vineyard, we're really excited to help you with your big dream. And here's what we know about you. Your dreams will require leaders, lots of leaders. And at Multiply Vineyard, we believe that healthy leaders make up healthy churches, and healthy churches plant new churches. Multiply Vineyard has new programs and connections to help you identify, gather, train, and release new leaders this year. So let us help you go further faster. Reach out to us at multiplyvineyard.org today, and let's start dreaming together.
Well, and you're striking a beautiful tension even as we're talking. You know, we don't know each other that well, but what you're doing each time, you've done it probably 10 times talking so far, where you say, let me just say this thing. I feel silly even saying it. So what's interesting is you're willing to say the craziest thing that you hope for while acknowledging, I'm just a limited person and we've made tons of mistakes and we'll make tons of mistakes. We tend to have people that do one or the other of those. Mm. So there's these lunatics out there just throwing around thoughts about like what could be, and what if we led all of Hollywood to Christ in a revival today? You know, we would take over the universe. And you're like, who are you? And I don't know, I'm just some guy who thought of that today. Or you're the other thing, which is I'm just nobody from nothing, and how could I do anything? And I just kind of hope I can like not sin as much today as I did yesterday.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be both things and live in reality. Like have a big dream and admit what's real and keep pressing toward that. What I hear you describing is a kind of resiliency. I bet if we flipped all of this and talked about all the setbacks, how many moments did things just get really, really hard?
It's been interesting to say, because like I would say the last 2 years, like the word that I've kind of taken for myself, I don't know if it's from God or not, I hope so, is the word resilient. Because I've said I want to be a resilient leader. Mm-hmm. Quick story, we were doing something through NewThing we called it Dream Week. Mm-hmm. And we have networks, about 400 networks in about 40, 50 different countries. And so we were trying to connect with as many of our network leaders as we possibly could during that week and just check in with them, see how they're doing and stuff. And it was in the middle of all this pandemic. And it's been, like we said, hard, really hard. And in addition to Exponential and NewThing, I lead a local church. I'm the lead pastor of a local church. And I'm going through all the same hard stuff that everybody else is listening is going through. And so we're talking during Dream Week to our network leaders. We call one of our networks in Cameroon. And they get on, but instead of being in their church building, they're in a parking garage. And we're,
where are you? What are you doing?
Right, exactly.
Did you forget the meeting?
Right. They explained to us, and we knew this part. They're in the middle of a civil war, and they heard gunshots near their church building. So they scrambled out of there and went to a nearby parking garage. But they wanted to make sure they were on the call to connect with us so we could talk about church planning.
Wow.
And I think that call was, just, to me, was kind of like, you know what? And I get inspiration from leaders in the majority world where, I mean, yeah, the pandemic's been really hard for them, but so has the civil war, and so has persecution, and so has poverty. And this is not a shame thing for us in North America, but it's kind of like, for me, it's been like, I want to be more like that.
It's reframing.
It is. And so for me, and I appreciate you saying that, and I hope it becomes true, I would like to be a resilient leader. And I think it's a real challenge for all of us.
Yes.
Particularly, I think in the North American context, where maybe we've, to a degree, had it a little easier than other parts in the world. Like, how do we do that?
Yeah. Well, and you already are one to be here now.
But it's nice you say. But I've also, I look over my shoulder, there's been so many kind, nice, good things that God's done in my life.
Yes.
Like I came from like a healthy,
Yes.
pretty functional family, parents who've been married 60 years, love each other. So, I mean, I didn't get a lot of baggage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some, but not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, then I get to start a church with my friends when I'm in my early 20s, and it does pretty well.
Yeah.
I get to be a part of some innovative, cool things like, you know, going multisite and starting Exponential. I get to write books.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, so all that. So it doesn't, you know what I mean? It's kind of like.
Well, let me ask it differently then.
Okay.
Because that's true and that's right. And I agree with you. And very few people find a way to stay hungry. Like they find a place where they're satisfied. You and I were both church planters.
Yep.
You were obviously more successful than me, faster. But for me, I dreamt in my mind that if I could just get my bills paid, that would just be like the most magical thing ever. Like I'm working and I've got this baby and like this is really, really hard. And I had this imagination that somehow if we had like a building that we could meet in all the time, like 24/7, not just we'd walk in and set up and I could like go to the grocery store and not check my checking account before I bought stuff. That I couldn't even imagine a better way to live. And of course you arrive there and it turns out life's still really hard. And strangely, and almost no one believes this until it's happening, when churches grow, they become more complicated. The problems become exponentially harder, not easier. You know, when you have a small church, you think that big church guy, I mean, he just walks in here and he clips his mic on, he preaches, you know, and he goes home and does whatever he wants. He makes his interns probably shovel his snow. And I hope you don't now that I said that. But anyway, so
I have not done that.
Okay, good. That's great. That was we were close to danger. But the truth is, like, you're dealing with very, very complex problems. I'm sure of it right now with budgets and people and institutions and organizations. How have you stayed hungry? How did you not hit moments where you just thought, this is great? Like, I could probably just do this for another 20 years. I could just ride this out. I could coast. I mean, like a lot of large church pastors, I mean, like friends of mine, they just get tired. I mean, especially after these 2 years. I mean, man, after these 2 years, as you're describing, how do I just like get this plane on the ground without it catching on fire and let somebody else fly this plane?
This feels like therapy. It's a good question. Okay, here's my shot at it.
Well, it's true, though. No, it's not. No, I'm not asking you to come up with something. I'm asking you to describe it.
This is helpful. I think two things came to mind as you were asking that have helped me stay hungry. One is, and I hope this comes across sincere, I feel so grateful. Mm-hmm. I mean, I live with an ongoing, even when things are hard, so to speak, with a real sense of gratitude that I get to do this.
Yeah, you've kept gratitude in front of you.
Yeah, and it's around me. I mean, and there's been some hard days, but for the most part, I know this is true. I have, ever since we started community 30 years ago, I haven't had a day where I looked at my watch and go like, okay, can I be done? I haven't had one day like that. And so it's been mostly like, I get to do stuff with people I like and my friends, that kind of stuff. Right. Yeah. All that's good. I think the other part, and this is kind of goes back to why I got in the game to begin with. The thing that motivates me most, this is the way we talk about it at Community Christian Church, is helping people find their way back to God. Mm-hmm. When we're in kind of like a room that oversees our one of our auditoriums. Mm-hmm. So like when someone there gets baptized, oh man, and the whole place, like they do here, gives them a standing ovation and applauds.
Yes, it's nuclear.
It is. You're going like, that's why I do what I do. Yes. And actually, I mean, that's why I wanted to plant a church. That's why I wanted to plant a reproducing church. That's why I love being a part of NewThing. That's why I love getting to lead Exponential. Because the best way to help more people find their way back to God is new churches. That never gets old. Yeah. And hearing their stories, and especially we have a culture where people, they tell everything. I mean, they just tell the whole story. Yeah. And it's just, that's the best.
So you're cultivating gratitude in your own life. You're staying connected to the stories of real people that are really meeting Jesus. And that makes you presently and consistently aware of those who haven't. Like, they're still out there. They're probably all around this building.
Yeah.
That makes you wake up every day. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I'm buying that. That's genuine.
But yeah, I think, I hope so.
It is.
But you're right. But it is easy to get distracted by, oh my gosh, we got to raise this money. We got to do this, that kind of stuff.
Somebody wrote me an email.
Some of that's not as much fun.
No, it's not. Some of that's not as much fun. Yeah, like your mask policy. That's been very simple, right?
Oh, yeah.
Super straightforward.
How hard could that be?
Exactly. Yeah. And so what you're saying is, in all the madness of what you're trying to do, you stayed focused by way of gratitude and seeing people come home. That is like really clean and clear. And just sitting with you, I believe you. Like, I can see it.
I hadn't really thought of it until you asked me, but I think that's it. Yeah.
And it is easy to get distracted, or you set false horizons. What's interesting hearing your story is you weren't thinking at the beginning, wouldn't it be cool to have a church that I got to preach and tell the stories
There's
I
been
want.
Times where I kind of got enamored with, if I had a church of 1,000 people, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then I had some people explode that dream for me, which is super helpful.
Wait, explode it how?
Neil Cole.
Oh, yeah, man.
So Neil Cole, it was another one of those.
He will explode that dream.
And I remember I was sitting in a workshop and he said, hey, I want you to take your dream. This would be good for anybody listening to do this.
Yeah.
He said, I want you to think about what's your dream for your church. And I already knew 1,000 people.
1,000 people. Can you imagine?
I would be crushing it.
We would be the best.
Such a bad, and I would word it terribly if my church had 1,000 people. It's just so.
God have mercy on us.
Right.
Yeah.
I hate myself. And then he said, okay, take that dream, and now I want you to multiply it, by 1 million.
And you're like, oh.
Yeah. And this is actually, I kind of tell the story out of order, but this is actually where the billion came.
Oh, interesting.
And so all of a sudden, and he said, now, not because I did the math, 1,000 times
I don't even know. It's
1,000 times
$1
billion. That's $1 billion. And that's when Neil was like, okay, now I want you to figure out, how would you make that happen? And it was just like, and it became a much more kingdom-minded dream. And I had a third thing. You're like, how come people don't think this way? Because we talked about, distracted and fear. The other thing is, I think we've kind of gotten stuck, and I am grateful for church growth, but we've gotten stuck in that paradigm, and we talk about it at Exponential as level 3 kind of thinking, where it's just growth kind of thinking. And we wake up, most pastors, we wake up, if we're on the kind of trying to make something happen side of things, saying, how can I grow my church? And that's how we word it. How we think that way. How can I grow my church?
Yeah.
And what Neil did, I think for me, was help me begin to ask a different question. Instead, was the question of how can we, I'm collaborating, work with other people. How can we multiply God's kingdom? And I'll tell you what, if you ask that question, how can we, me with other leaders, other churches, multiply, not just grow, but multiply, because we're sending now. We're not just collecting God's kingdom. We got a kingdom scorecard, not just 1,000 people. That's nothing compared to what you could do. It's a fundamentally different question. And that was super helpful to me.
Boy, it's really powerful. And yet, I think about whoever was in that room that was like, man, if I have a church of 10,000.
Oh, yeah.
Like 10 billion.
Well, so now we ran out of people.
Yeah, now we're going for Martians,
right?
But that's a little bit of a joke, but it's actually a funny thought to me. 10, Neil Cole, that's dumb. But what's interesting is even the other person's dream is way bigger than yours, 10 times, technically. And it still is just sort of silly because it doesn't get you to the root reality of how you operate.
Right.
Which is what you're saying when you say level 3 is, how do I grow by addition?
Well, maybe for your listeners. So at Exponential, we talk about level 1 churches as those churches in decline. We talk about level 2 as those churches that have plateaued. And then level 3 are those churches that are starting to grow, growing churches. Most of us, I think probably for the last 30 or 40 years, have only thought of in a paradigm of how do I grow my church? What we challenge leaders to do at Exponential is no, we want you to think in terms of level 4 or level 5.
Mm-hmm.
Level 4 is reproducing,
Yep.
which is to plant. If you plant even one other church or one other site, you're now a reproducing church.
Yes.
But we would love for you to have an aspirational goal. How do you get to level 5, a multiplying church, where you're thinking in terms of like 4 generations of multiplication? And I know Multiply Vineyard, you guys are all about this, and I love that. How do we think in terms of like 2 Timothy 2:2, 4 generations of multiplication? You know, Acts 1:8, Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and the ends of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we have that big dream of how do I get to a multiplying church, I mean, that's a much bigger kingdom-minded dream than it is a level 3 small kind of church growth kind of dream.
Yeah. I like level 4 and 5 too. But you're saying that the real sticking point of churches that have actually been pretty great, I mean, they've done a good job, they're growing. What you just described from Neil Cole is that's a paradigmic operating system.
Absolutely. Yes.
So it isn't like, hey, we've been a level 3 church. You know what we could do? We could add in this kind of cool little thing on the side that might get us to help plant a church or something. No. You could do that technically, but no, we want you to think entirely differently about. So what's been most fruitful to get that done? How do churches start thinking about multiplication? And you're helping us do this, by the way. I mean, we're
loving it. We're big fans of the Vineyard, and we're loving it through NewThing, getting the opportunity to work together. I think, one, we're trying to shift into what I'd call movemental thinking. Now, don't let that throw you, okay? I'm not you, but people listening.
I'm in.
Sorry.
I'm all in.
I think every movement at its core has some kind of apprenticeship.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are leading a church of 50 people, and let's say you got 3 or 4 or 5 small groups, I would say the starting point for you is start thinking, how do I, within each of those small groups, have someone who's not only leading them, but is apprenticing, so we start multiplying those groups. That's how we started.
Yep.
Because what happens if you get that multiplicative, is that a word? Okay, kind of experience inside going into church, and that starts happening, my experience has been, you will eventually plant other churches unless you intentionally stop it. Stop it, because no, I don't want people to leave.
Right.
I don't want people to leave my 4 walls. I want to be able to count them in my attendance.
Yes.
You do have the opportunity as a leader. You can thwart it and stop it and stun it, like you said. But if you'll start with apprenticeship and then begin to apply apprenticeship at every level, or not only are you doing it with your small group leaders, but hey, as a pastor, what if I have a leadership resident? There's somebody who I know who's interested in pastoring church. I could bring them. They can hang out with me for 6 months. I'll teach them everything I know.
Yep.
And then you know what? We're going to get up on the stage. We're going to bless them and commission them. Maybe if we have a little bit of money, we give them some money. But you know what? We also want to know, no matter what, you can count on us. We are for you. And then you bless them and you send them. And you just do that every year. Like a guy like Ralph Moore. You know Ralph?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Ralph's a perfect example.
He's amazing.
He is. Well, he is and he isn't.
Okay.
Which is what I love about Ralph.
Wait. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I think I know what you're going to say, but tell me what that means.
Okay. This is going to be bad. I think Ralph won't mind if I say this.
He won't mind.
Because I am such a huge fan. He's a part of our team at Exponential. So I remember the first time I had Ralph speak at Exponential. Okay. And I'd heard him speak, and he's okay. I mean, people would probably say the same thing about me. I'm okay. I'm not Andy Stanley. I'm not Craig Groeschel. I'm not. Right. And Ralph certainly is not. And so I'm calling him on the phone, kind of prepping it for. I say, hey, I think we're going to do an interview.
Dude, this is the move. I know this move. Yeah,
the interview, because I know there's gold there.
Right.
And then, but Ralph's smart. So
but I'm the minor. Yeah.
Right, but Ralph pretty soon is going like, yeah, you think I suck as a communicator.
I understand what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah. He's been around too.
But I want people to hear how he has developed so many young leaders and pastors. The guy has helped start, through this chain of reproduction, more than 2,000, moving close to 3,000 churches now. Just one dude.
Yes.
And he's probably, I don't know if he's ever pastored a church, I don't know, more than 500 or 600. Maybe he has at that age. Which is a good-sized church, but still, it's not your 10,000 like you're talking about.
Right.
And the thing I love about what Ralph did is lots of us can do that.
Yes.
Lots of us, if we start in our 20s and go like, you know what? No, this is not going to be about me getting to have a church of 1,000 or 10,000, but instead, I'm going to constantly be multiplying and blessing, hero-making. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Hero-making of other leaders and then sending them out. I mean, you could be responsible for a family tree of like 1 million people. It's not even an exaggeration.
No.
And so that's why I love Ralph as an example, because it's kind of like, it's one, We can't be Craig Rochelle. There's one of them. There's one Andy Stanley. But you know what? As awesome as Ralph is, I think there's a bunch of us out there who could be Ralph.
We're going to run out of time
Okay.
here, which means you're going to have to commit to do this again with me sometime.
This has been a blast.
Okay, good. Okay. I want you to explicate that little hero-making framework a bit. You've written beautifully about this. Truly, it's like really, really useful stuff. Explicate that a bit. So if I don't even know what you're saying when you say that, what does that mean?
I think
Because it relates to the multiplying, right? I mean, they're together.
there's a shift that needs to take place in every leader. And sometimes it takes them until they're older in life, or maybe until you're almost a parent, to have this kind of mindset. But I think you can get it early in your 20s. And it's this. It's the mindset going like, I'm not trying to be the hero. What I'm doing is I'm trying to make heroes of other people. And I'm going to do everything I can to make heroes of other people. One of my mentors was, and this is another kind thing that God did, was a guy named Bob Buford. You know Bob?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so Bob, and he'll know this about Bob. He used to carry, he was a very successful guy, made a ton of money in cable TV, and then helped start a couple not-for-profits that I was on the board of that made a huge impact for the kingdom. One of them was Leadership Network.
Yes.
He would carry in his front pocket or in his wallet a little card, and he'd have on it the names of 10 or 12 young emerging leaders that he was always investing in both relationally and financially. He was being a hero maker. And for a while, I got to be one of the names on his list. And Bob would always say this, and this is the saying every hero-making leader has. He would say this, my fruit grows on other people's trees. And I love that. My fruit grows on other people's trees. Even with his organizations, he would say this, we're the platform, we're not the show. We're the platform, we're not the show. As a leader, when you develop that mindset, no, you know what? My fruit grows on other people's trees. Other leaders, what they do, that's the biggest difference I'm going to make in my life. That's when, you start to become a hero maker. And really, that's the fundamental shift that creates movement.
What I love about what I'm hearing you say is I've heard any number of ways of talking about multiplication that is, I mean, honestly, sort of math-based. Like if 12 people engage 12 people, engage 12 people.
Okay. It's in the introduction of Exponential, our book. Yes, absolutely.
And that's a fun thing to do, right? I mean, like, wow, that is a fun thing to do with numbers. Like, whoa. And it's suddenly 10 billion or whatever. But you're describing not just the mechanics, you're describing the ethos. You're describing a commitment to like the kind of person I want to be. Like this is the kind of man I want to be. This is the kind of woman I want to be. I want to be someone that they become who they never imagined they could be. Yeah. Because I've been near them. I provided resources. I provided time. I provided a platform. That's, again, this is the kind of thing that obviously makes sense. Like no one would hear that and go, I am not a hero maker.
No one would say that?
No, I want to...
would they say they... Oh, no. Aspirationally, they want to be that. Right.
Of course. So why isn't everybody a hero maker? Because they become the hero themselves?
Yeah, we want to be the hero of the story.
Right.
You got time for another quick story?
I do.
Okay, I'll be brief.
No, you don't have to be brief.
Are you a runner?
I'm... I mean, have I run? Is that what you're asking?
I'm setting up the story.
Have I run a long ways from time to time?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I've done some of that.
Okay. So
I mean, mostly not by my own will.
One of my heroes, this is kind of mixing metaphors a little bit, that I haven't met yet is Shalane Flanagan. You know Shalane Flanagan? Shalane Flanagan is probably has been one of the premier distance runners that we have in the United States. So in 2017 or 18, somewhere in there, she won the New York Marathon. It was the first time in 40 years that a female American, because it's always Africans, that a female American had won the New York City Marathon. She did it in like 2 hours and 26 minutes. Wow. Unbelievable. They ran an article about her in the New York Times. I wish I had the article in front of me, but essentially what they do, they talk about how there's this thing that now has emerged called the Shalane effect. And the Shalane effect is how she is like mothering other young runners. And in fact, all 10 athletes who were a part of Team Nike with her, all 10 of them, along with her, made it to the Olympics. So it was like, if you can just get close to Shalane, you're going to do great things.
Wow.
It's this awesome thing. So that was 2017. 2017, she wins the New York Marathon. First time in 40 years any female American has ever won the New York Marathon. So then next year is 2018. It's been like, again, 30-some years since anybody in Boston's won the Boston Marathon. Who do you think wins?
Who wins the Boston Marathon?
The next year. A female American hasn't won it in like 30, 35 years.
Well, it could be Shalane.
Well, no, it's not.
It's someone near Shalane.
Boom, you got it. Look at that. She literally, she comes up next to Des Linden. Des Linden's this other female American runner, and she's always come up short. Like, she's a great runner, but like she's gotten second and doesn't.
But the Shalane effect.
Shalane comes there and says, Des, this is your year. So it's the worst conditions they've had in years and years and years. Torrential downpour, and it's cold.
Wow.
They run the whole thing together.
Oh,
in fact, at one point, they even stop and go to the bathroom together. And long story short, Des Linden ends up winning it. Fast forward to 2020, when they had the Olympic, or maybe it was 2020, but it ended up being 2021 Olympic trials for the female Americans to qualify for the Olympic and the marathon. That year, there were 5 times as many women who qualified for the Olympics than in the previous in 2016. And everybody points to Shalane as this inspiration for women running. And in fact, I'll personalize it. My daughter, in the last few years, in 2019, we ran the Chicago Marathon together. In 2021, she went and ran New York. And part of the inspiration for her was Shalane.
That's incredible.
So what she is in effect, and now she's actually a coach. She's moving, which totally makes sense for her.
It must be. Yeah.
And see, if we would have that kind of a mindset as pastors, I want to win. I want to be the best I can. But you know what? All 10 people that are around me, I'm taking them to the Olympics with me. I'm going to make sure they're great too. I'm going to make sure they do great things. And I think that's exactly what Jesus did with his disciples. Because remember, one of the things he said to them, he said, hey, guys, you're going to do even greater things than these. You're going to do even greater things than these. And I think what he was doing, he's looking at them going like, you know what? We're starting this movement. I'm only going to impact 12 of you, but you guys, over time, you're going to impact the whole planet. And I think that's what he was doing with him. I think Jesus would be a hero maker.
So what we are asking God for, and you're helping us with, is what we might call someday the Ferguson effect. Maybe. I hadn't really thought of that, but that would be, that's a cool thought. It is a cool thought. And you are doing that. Honestly, you are investing in the vineyard. You're investing in who knows how many people all over the world and networks. And honestly, we could not be more grateful. And everything that you're doing in this place where we're sitting is radiating out all over the place. And I'm really, really grateful. And we really do want more time with you some other time, if you would be willing to. I would love to. And I think we're going to hang out some at Exponential. And I think we're scheming more stuff to do with Multiply Vineyard. We are. So I'm excited about that. We will do all the things. All right. If anyone's ever invited to do something with us, with you, now they must do it. All right. And we will refer to it as the Ferguson effect. Well, we better be careful. For all of time. Why don't we wait till I'm dead to do that? Shalane's still walking around. She is. Okay, so. She's Shalane Flanagan. Okay, fair enough. Well, you are Dave Ferguson. And thanks for the time. Hey, thanks, Jay.
The We Are Vineyard podcast is a production from the team at Vineyard USA. If you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. Leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Connect with us online for additional resources. Our website is vineyardusa.org, and we're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at VineyardUSA. Thanks for listening. See you next week.